This is the Canon R6V, a full-frame, video-first mirrorless camera with a 7K full-frame sensor, open-gate recording, and IBIS as well. This camera is, at its heart, essentially the same camera as the C50 and R6 Mark III. So we've seen a lot of these features before, but this time it's designed specifically for content creators. People making work, much like the video that you're watching now. Small teams and solo creators, in-house marketing departments, podcasts, and behind-the-scenes footage. It's now clearer than ever to see these three pillars forming in Canon's camera lineup. On one side, you have the regular R cameras, from the R1 and R5 Mark II on the high end, all the way down to the R10 and R50 on the more consumer end. The traditional photography-first mirrorless hybrid cameras. They can still do great video, of course, they're hybrid cameras, but they're primarily designed as a photography tool. And then you have the Cinema EOS lineup, the C50, C80 and C400 cinema cameras for video professionals, people making the more traditional styles of video content. Maybe a production company offering their services to clients, or freelance video camera operators. The kind of work where you're being paid a day rate and you have to deliver without fail, no matter the situation, every single time. But the trouble has always been that there is this whole grey area, of course, in between those two areas of the market. People making a variety of video and stills, feeding the hungry content engine which surrounds us in modern life. Social media, YouTube, podcasts, anything like that. People creating all of the time, often by themselves and for themselves. Some brands refer to this as the vlogging market, but I kind of think that does this area a bit of a disservice. After all, they might need a slightly different set of tools than the traditional pro video customers, but it is still undoubtedly a pro video use case. This is a highly important area of the industry now, and this is the area of work that Canon have designed this video lineup for. So the V1, R50V, and now this R6V, which is going to sit at the top of that video lineup. And it's a very clear statement from Canon. This V lineup, this is not a consumer video lineup. The R6V is without a doubt a professional video camera tool. So let's go over what's here. One feature which the R6V does have, which the C50 doesn't, which people might be quite pleased to see, is IBIS. Canon have long stuck to their principles and avoided moving sensors on their cinema cameras like the C50. But here, in the video line, we do get IBIS because for this kind of fast-paced solo content creator work, IBIS is a very useful technology. They say it's 7.5 stops of stabilization, and this is how it looks in practice. Now this is walking, of course, with their new 20 to 50mm power zoom lens, which they've launched alongside this camera, and the lens does have lens IS. And of course, because this is IBIS though, you do get stabilization no matter what mode you're in or what lens you're using. This is now using a VCM Prime, which has no lens stabilization, and it's raw video in open-gate, so no digital IS either, and it's still stabilized. And we still get the digital IS options when we need them. There's regular and enhanced levels of digital IS. There's also now a subject tracking IS mode inside the same menu. Now this crops in a little bit, and then it will follow your subject a bit as it moves. It's fairly subtle and there's no control over this really. This is especially useful for talking headshots like this one, which obviously content creators are going to be doing quite a lot of. It just means that the camera is going to follow your framing a little bit if your subject moves a little bit further over to one side or a little bit more up or slouches down in their chair than you were expecting to. It's very handy. It just saves you having to shoot a bit wider and crop in post. The actual video recording modes are pretty much the same as we've seen on the R6 Mark III, and therefore pretty much exactly the same as on the C50. There are a few differences. For example, in the picture profiles, we get C-Log 2, 3 and Canon 709, but not wide DR, which is the one we usually use for our work here at ProAV on the C50 and C80. Canon 709 does do a very similar job though, so it's not too big of a deal. Apart from that, the big ticket items are still here. We get OpenGate video in either 7K RAW or H.265. In normal 16:9 video, we can do 7K RAW, which can now go up to 60p, or we can use the 4K H.265 codec XF-HEVC, which is probably what I'd recommend for most people, or MP4 based XF-AVC-S in either long op or all I, and 42210-bit is available in all of those options. The main codec that is missing here, which the C50 has, is their MXF-based XF-AVC codec, which is a more broadcast-friendly option, which plays back nicely in their post-production software and gives interlaced options which a lot of broadcasters need. But again, it's not really needed for content creators, so that makes a lot of sense not to have it in this camera. The physical design is where we see the biggest differences. And it really feels like a blend of the R6 Mark III and the C50. It has no EVF, but also has no XLR top handle. So this is about stripping back those cameras and making something which has just the bits which are needed for this kind of work. It still has active cooling, but the fans are significantly smaller than on the C50. So we will have to see what overheating looks like here, but there is some active cooling, so I hope we wouldn't have too much trouble unless you're going for those really intensive recording options like 7K RAW 60p or 4K 120, things like that. We still get a full-size HDMI port, which is very important as it's going to be used a lot here, both for external on-camera monitors and wireless video transmitters, but also for multi-camera environments in podcast studios. And the control you get over what is shown on that HDMI output is nowhere near as much as on the Cinema EOS menus inside the C50. But you don't get annoying blackouts when you hit record, so you can work with it. But it does shut off the screen at the back of the camera if you enable the on-screen displays over the HDMI. If it's a clean feed though, the screen comes back. I would love to see Canon change that, especially with cameras like this one, as this is the way their regular R-series cameras behave, but this is a dedicated video camera now. The buttons and markings are all video orientated and you can customize most of them. For example, I instantly changed this one from auto exposure lock to be false color. On the top, we have a dedicated button for live streaming, and on the front, we have an extra record button. Audio is a definite area where the C50 is going to be a lot more capable. But again, this is probably all that is needed for most kinds of content creators. We don't get the XLR top handle, but you can still add XLR inputs with the Tascam unit if you really need to. Most people, though, I imagine, would be using the 3.5mm inputs with a wireless mic system like the Rode or Hollyland options. But if you do like to use a hardwired shotgun microphone, then you'll need the Tascam XLR unit. And there's no 32-bit float audio recording here. That's another thing I'd love to see Canon add. Nikon, Panasonic and Sony have all now added it to their cameras. And so that is kind of an area where Canon is being a bit left behind, which is a shame. There is support for 4 channels of audio though, which could well be useful once you're adding that XLR top unit. One very nice touch is that the grip of the camera now has a 1/4-inch screw thread on it so that you can easily mount your camera vertically. It's a simple thing, but it makes a huge difference in this kind of work for content creators. And of course, there's a physical switch on the top to flip the camera over to stills mode and be taking photos in seconds. And the media slots and battery slots are exactly the same as the R6 and C50. One CF Express, one SD card, and Canon's LPE6P batteries. So that was our first look at the Canon R6V, the new flagship model in this video lineup between the regular R-series hybrid cameras and their Cinema EOS products. And I think this is a real statement piece for Canon. Yes, compare this to the R6 Mark III and the C50, and you'll find lots of things which this is missing, but the essentials, they're still there. And for the kinds of work that this is intended for, that big content creator section of the industry, a lot of those missing features aren't necessarily ones that they'd be using anyway. And if you compare this to the kinds of cameras that we normally see released for that content creator market, this is significantly more powerful. Yes, it's stripped back a bit from the R6 and the C50, but no one could accuse this of not being a professional video camera. You know, we get 7K 60p RAW, open-gate video, false color and waveform exposure tools, a stabilized sensor, 4K 120p with the full sensor width. All of that for a price tag which is considerably less than either the R6 Mark III or the C50. I'm curious to hear what you all think, but I think Canon are really onto something here. My bet is that there's a lot of people out there that now feel like this is finally a style of camera which is actually designed and intended for them and their work. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and of course if you want to pre-order one for yourself, head over to ProAV with the links down below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.